Sitting on the highway, waiting to catch speeders, a state trooper spotted a car crawling along at just 22 miles per hour. He thought, "That's just as dangerous as going too fast." So he turned on his lights and pulled the car over. Inside were 6 elderly ladies, all wide-eyed like they'd seen a ghost. The driver said, "Officer, I don't understand. I wasn't speeding. What's the problem?" He replied, "Ma'am, driving too slowly can be just as dangerous as speeding." The woman calmly said, "But I was going exactly 22 miles an hour." Trying not to laugh, the officer explained, "That's not the speed limit, ma'am. That's the route number." Her face turned red. "Oh, thank you, officer," she said with a nervous laugh. As he walked away, he looked back at the other ladies, still pale and silent, and asked, "Are they all right?" She smiled and said, "They'll be fine in a minute. We just got off Route 142. An elderly woman is speeding down the highway when she sees a policeman with a radar gun. The policeman signals her to pull over, then walks up to her and asks her with a smile, "What's your hurry?" "I'm late for work." "Sure," says the officer. "What do you do?" "I'm a rectal distender." "What? A rectal distender? What exactly is that?" "Well, you see, I start by inserting one finger, then the other, then I work up to 3 fingers, 4 fingers, until my whole hand is in. I work from side to side until I have both hands in, and then I slowly but surely expand the rectum until it is about 6 feet wide." "And what do you do with a 6-foot butthole?" "I give him a speed gun and put him on the side of the road." My husband and I were all dressed up for a nice night out, dinner and a show. Since we'd been burgled before, we left the light on and put the cat out in the backyard. When the Uber arrived, we stepped outside, and of course, our chunky cat darted right back in and ran upstairs. Since she loves chasing the parakeet, my husband rushed back inside to grab her and put her out again. Not wanting the driver to think the house would be empty all night, I casually said, "Oh, he's just saying goodnight to my mother." A few minutes later, my husband jumps in the car, all flustered, and as we pull away he says, "Sorry that took so long. The stubborn old thing was hiding under the bed. I had to poke her with a hanger to get her out. Then she tried to run, so I wrapped her in a blanket so she wouldn't scratch me, dragged her downstairs, and tossed her out back. She better not mess up the garden again." The silence in that Uber was absolutely priceless. A man spent his entire life obsessed with money. Saving it. Protecting it. Counting every cent. On his deathbed, he called his wife close and said, "When I die, I want all my money buried with me. I'm taking it with me." She didn't argue. She simply nodded and promised. A few days later, he passed. At the funeral, just before the casket was closed, the wife stood up. "Wait," she said. She walked over holding a small box, placed it inside the casket, and stepped back. The lid closed. Afterward, her friend rushed over. "Please don't tell me you actually put all that money in there." The wife smiled calmly. "I made a promise. I'm not a liar." Her friend stared in disbelief. "You mean you buried everything with him?" The wife nodded. "I gathered all the money, deposited it into my account." Then she paused. "And I wrote him a check." A man spent his entire life obsessed with money. Saving it. Protecting it. Counting every cent. On his deathbed, he called his wife close and said, "When I die, I want all my money buried with me. I'm taking it with me." She didn't argue. She simply nodded and promised. A few days later, he passed. At the funeral, just before the casket was closed, the wife stood up. "Wait," she said. She walked over holding a small box, placed it inside the casket, and stepped back. The lid closed. Afterward, her friend rushed over. "Please don't tell me you actually put all that money in there." The wife smiled calmly. "I made a promise. I'm not a liar." Her friend stared in disbelief. You mean you buried everything with him? The wife nodded. I gathered all the money, deposited it into my account. Then she paused. And I wrote him a check. It was a normal Tuesday morning. Coffee brewing, keyboards clicking, printers working overtime, just another predictable day at the office. Tom was heading to grab his second cup of coffee when something made him stop mid-step. By the copier stood Alex. Now, Alex was that guy. Always perfectly dressed, crisp shirts, classic ties, and shoes you could practically see your reflection in. Organized, punctual, borderline allergic to anything flashy. But today, something was off. There it was. A small, shiny earring in his left ear. Tom blinked. Looked again. Still there. He walked over slowly, trying to act casual. Hey, Alex, he said, pouring coffee. Didn't know you were into accessories now. New style? Alex froze for a split second. Then slowly turned, forcing a small smile, touching the earring like he had just remembered it was there. Ah, yeah? Trying something different. Tom smirked. Different, huh? Since when? Alex looked around, leaned in a little closer, and lowered his voice. Since my wife found it in our bed. An elderly couple, let's call them Harold and Mabel, were enjoying a peaceful drive, music playing, not a care in the world. Mabel was behind the wheel, cruising along happily, maybe just a little faster than she realized. Suddenly, red and blue lights in the mirror. She pulls over calmly. The officer walks up. Ma'am, do you know you were speeding? Mabel cups her ear. Harold, what did he say? Harold leans over and shouts. He says you were speeding. Oh. Mabel smiles politely. The officer continues. May I see your license? Mabel turns again. What did he say now? Harold louder than ever. He wants your license. She hands it over sweetly. The officer looks at it, then says casually, I see you're from Arkansas. I once had a blind date there, with the ugliest woman I've ever seen. Mabel doesn't hear a thing. She turns again. Harold, what did he say? Harold pauses. Thinks fast. Chooses wisely. Then leans in and shouts. He said he knows you. A burglar quietly slipped into a house late one night. Flashlight in hand, he started scanning for anything valuable. Suddenly, a voice whispered from the darkness. You're not alone. He froze. Heart racing, he turned off the flashlight and listened. Silence. After a moment, he shook it off and kept going. As he reached for a speaker to unplug it, the voice came again, clearer this time. Someone's watching you. Now he was sweating. He spun around, shining the light into every corner, until it landed on a parrot sitting calmly in a cage. Was that you? He asked. Yeah, the parrot said. Just trying to warn you. The burglar let out a nervous laugh. Warn me? Who are you? Moses, the bird replied. Moses? The burglar scoffed. Who names a parrot Moses? The bird tilted its head and said, The same people who named their Rottweiler. Watcher. A guy gets home from work one afternoon and finds his wife sitting on the front porch, suitcases packed and ready to go. Where do you think you're off to? He asks. I'm heading to Las Vegas, she says. I just found out I can get paid for the same stuff I've been doing for you for free. The husband thinks about it for a second, then bolts inside. A few minutes later, he's back on the porch with his own bag in hand. Wait, where are you going? She asks. He grins and says, I'm coming with you. I want to see how you're going to survive on $50 a year. Then there was this lawyer with a wife and 12 kids who needed to find a new place to live after their landlord decided to sell the house. Every time he mentioned how many children he had, landlords would turn him down immediately, terrified of the wear and tear. Eventually, he came up with a plan. He told his wife to take 11 of the children for a walk through the nearby cemetery, while he took the youngest one with him to meet a rental agent. The house was perfect, the neighborhood was great, and the price was right. The agent asked, "So, how many children do you have?" 12, the lawyer answered, completely deadpan. The agent looked around, confused. "Well, where are the others?" With a heavy sigh and a somber look, the lawyer said, "They're at the cemetery with their mother." He got the house. It just goes to show, you don't necessarily have to lie, you just have to know how to frame the truth. A rich playboy had so many girlfriends that he hadn't enough time to entertain them all. So he made a research lab an offer they couldn't refuse and got them to clone him in order to balance the load. However, the cloning technique hadn't been perfected, causing the clone to suffer from Tourette's syndrome. By the clone's obscenities caused the girlfriends to run away. Eventually the playboy decided something had to be done, so he took the clone to a remote part of the Grand Canyon and pushed him over a cliff. He thought he'd got away with it, but shortly after, the police arrested him for making an obscene clone fall. Army squad on exercise in the jungle, Sergeant Major briefs the boys on things to look out for. "Lads, the women are so lovable you will fall for them. You must avoid them at all costs, as they are diseased. Next, the water has the dreaded juju worm in it, drink it, and you will suffer. Be warned. Finally, there is a snake so deadly you must really avoid it. It has black and yellow stripes, easy to recognize if you can't grab its tail and run your hand up to the head and whack it. On your way, lads." 2 weeks later, 3 hospital cases the Sarge visits. "What happened, soldier?" "Gorgeous local girl seduced me and now I have this pox." "Told you so, lad." "Next, what about you?" "Water, Sarge, I'm so thirsty I needed a drink and this worm is eating my bottom." Finally, the last one was head to foot in bandages. "So, what's this?" Soldier then moaned. "Black and yellow snake." "Sure, I caught it, and ran my hand up it like you said, and there I was with 2 fingers up the bottom of the biggest Bengal tiger you ever did see." Frank and Fiona were making passionate love in Frank's van when suddenly Fiona, who was a bit on the kinky side, and had just read 50 Shades of Grey, yells out, "Oh fat boy, whip me, whip me." Frank, not wanting to pass up this unique opportunity, obviously did not have any whips to hand but, in a flash of inspiration, opened the window, snapped the antenna off his van and proceeded to whip Fiona until they both collapsed in sadomasochistic ecstasy. About a week later, Fiona notices that the marks left by the whipping session are not healing and starting to fester a bit, so she goes to the doctor. The doctor takes one look at the wounds and asks, "Did you get these marks having sex?" Fiona, a little too embarrassed that she had even had sex with Frank, let alone allowed him to indulge in her own kinky desires, eventually admits, "Yes, I did." Nodding his head knowingly, the doctor exclaims, "I thought so, because in all my years as a doctor, you've got the worst case of aerial disease that I've ever seen." Mr. Smith wanted to become a teacher in the worst way, but the only job he could find was as an instructor at an all-female college teaching sex education. His wife was a very jealous woman, so Mr. Smith decided he would tell his wife that he would be teaching a sailboat class at this college so that she would not get angry. He was very happy, and for months all was well. As fate would have it, one day in the grocery store checkout lane, Mrs. Smith overheard a group of girls standing in line behind her talking about college and their instructor, Mr. Smith. The girls went on and on about how great this Mr. Smith was at teaching their class. The cashier handed Mrs. Smith her change and said, "Have a great day, Mrs. Smith, and thank you again." One of the girls in line heard the cashier and asked Mrs. Smith if she was related to the Mr. Smith that was teaching at the college. Mrs. Smith replied, "Yes, he is my husband." Well, that set off a torrent of accolades about how knowledgeable Mr. Smith was about the subject matter he was teaching and about how he got the whole class to discuss their fears about learning the subject. Well, Mrs. Smith was taken back by what she heard from these girls and replied, "I don't know how you find him to be so gifted at teaching you this course. You know he only tried it twice in his life. The first time he tried it, he got sick, and the second time, his hat blew off and he just quit. A man walks into a bar and asks the bartender, "If I show you a really good trick, will you give me a free drink?" The bartender considers it, then agrees. The man reaches into his pocket and pulls out a tiny rat. He reaches into his other pocket and pulls out a tiny piano. The rat stretches, cracks his knuckles, and proceeds to play the blues. The bartender pours the man a drink on the house and he puts the rat and piano away. After the man finished his drink, he asked the bartender, "If I show you an even better trick, will you give me free drinks for the rest of the evening?" The bartender agrees, thinking that no trick could possibly be better than the first. The man reaches into his pockets again and pulls out the tiny rat and tiny piano. The rat stretches, cracks his knuckles, and proceeds to play the blues. The man reaches into a third pocket and pulls out a small bullfrog, who begins to sing along with the rat's music. While the man is enjoying his beverages, a stranger confronts him and offers him $100,000 for the bullfrog. "Sorry," the man replies. "He's not for sale." The stranger increases the offer to $250,000 cash up front. "No," he insists. "He's not for sale." The stranger again increases the offer, this time to $500,000 cash. The man finally agrees and turns the frog over to the stranger in exchange for the money. "Are you insane?" the bartender demanded. "That frog could have been worth millions to you, and you let him go for a mere $500,000. "Don't worry about it," the man answered. "The frog was nothing special. You see, the rat's a ventriloquist." Woman talking to her husband. "My friend Susan said her boyfriend recites poems about love to her. I think that's so romantic. Why can't you do something like that?" Husband replies, "I can do that. Roses are red, your panties are moist. I'd take you to bed, but I don't have a hoist." A high-powered lawyer checked into the hospital for a routine stay, and within a few hours, he managed to get on everyone's last nerve. He barked orders at the nurses, complained about the food, and generally acted like the entire floor was his private office. Most of the staff started avoiding his room whenever they could. Everyone except the head nurse, anyway. She had absolutely zero patience for his ego. One afternoon, she walked in and calmly told him, "Time to check your temperature." He immediately launched into a fresh rant, complaining about the service, the bed, even the way the light hit the walls. After several minutes of non-stop whining, he finally let out a dramatic sigh and opened his mouth. She just shook her head. "Not that way. I need a different kind of reading." More grumbling and eye-rolling followed, but eventually, with a loud groan, he turned over and did as he was told. The nurse handled the whole thing with a perfectly straight face. "I need to grab something from the hall," she said. "Don't move an inch." Then she walked out and left the door wide open. So there he was. Stuck. Humiliated. He had to watch people pass by in the hallway, most of them doing a terrible job of hiding their smirks. About 20 minutes later, his doctor walked in, stopped dead in his tracks, and just stared. "What exactly is going on here?" the doctor asked. The lawyer, now beet red and fuming, snapped. "What? Haven't you ever seen someone getting their temperature taken?" The doctor raised an eyebrow and replied, "Not quite like that." It took a second, but the realization finally hit. The nurse had won. My wife and I were lying in bed watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I turned to her and said, "Hey, want to have some fun?" She didn't even hesitate. "No." I smiled and asked, "Is that your final answer?" She kept staring at the TV. "Yes." I nodded and said, "All right. I'll phone a friend." And that's when the fight started. I took my wife out to dinner, and for some reason the waiter asked for my order first. "I'll have the rump steak rare." He looked at me and said, "Aren't you worried about mad cow disease?" I said, "Nah, she can order for herself." And that's when the fight started. At her high school reunion, my wife kept staring at a drunk guy sitting alone. I asked, "You know him?" She sighed. "Yeah, my ex. After we broke up, he started drinking and never stopped." I said, "Wow, who knew someone could celebrate that long?" And that's when the fight started. Our lawnmower broke, and my wife kept hinting that I should fix it, but I was always busy. One day I came home and found her in the yard cutting the grass with sewing scissors. I watched for a minute, went inside, then came back out with a toothbrush and said, "When you're done, you can clean the driveway too. The doctors say I'll walk again, but I'll always have a limp." My wife asked, "What's on TV?" I said, "Dust." And that's when the fight started. One Saturday morning I got up early, packed lunch, hooked up the boat and headed out fishing. Then I checked the weather, a storm all day. So I went back home, quietly undressed and slipped into bed. I whispered, "Weather's terrible out there." She mumbled, "I know, and can you believe my idiot husband is out fishing in that?" And that's when the fight started. For our anniversary, my wife said she wanted something shiny that goes from 0 to 150 in 3 seconds. So I bought her a bathroom scale. And that's when the fight started. I went to apply for retirement benefits but forgot my wallet. The clerk said, "Just unbutton your shirt." I showed my gray chest hair. She said, "That'll do," and processed everything. When I told my wife, she said, "You should have dropped your pants. Maybe you'd qualify for disability too." And that's when the fight started. My wife stood in front of the mirror and said, "I feel horrible. I'm old, fat, and ugly. I need a compliment." I said, "Your eyesight is perfect." And that's when the fight started. I rear-ended a car one morning. The driver got out and he was a dwarf. He looked up at me and said, "I am not happy." I said, "Well then, which one are you?" And that's when the fight started. One year I bought my mother-in-law a cemetery plot for Christmas. The next year I didn't get her anything. When she asked why, I said, "You didn't use last year's gift." And that's when the fight started. A man who couldn't see walked into a small restaurant and took a seat by the window. The owner came over with a menu, but the man smiled and said, "I won't be needing that. I'm blind. Just bring me a used fork from someone else's plate. I can tell what to order by the smell." The owner raised an eyebrow but went along with it. He grabbed a fork from the dish area and handed it over. The man lifted it, inhaled deeply, and nodded. "Perfect. I'll have the meatloaf with mashed potatoes." The owner stood there for a second, stunned, then headed back to the kitchen. He told his wife, who was cooking, what had just happened. They both laughed it off, but it stuck with him. A few days later, the man came back. Forgetting, the owner brought a menu again. The man gently reminded him and once more asked for a used fork. Curious, the owner brought one over. Again, the man smelled it carefully. I'll go with the mac and cheese this time." Now the owner was convinced something strange was going on. After the man left, he told his wife, "Next time he comes in, I'm going to test this." The following week, the man returned. The owner rushed into the kitchen and whispered, "Do me a favor, take this fork and run it across your clothes." His wife laughed but played along, handing it back. The owner brought the fork to the table, barely containing his curiosity. The man took it, inhaled, paused for a moment, then smiled. "Well, I didn't know Mary worked here." An engineer was crossing a road one day when a frog called out to him and said, "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess." He bent over, picked up the frog, and put it in his pocket. The frog spoke up again and said, "If you kiss me, I'll turn back into a beautiful princess and stay with you for 1 week." The engineer took the frog out of his pocket, smiled at it, and returned it to the pocket. The frog then cried out, "If you kiss me and turn me back into a princess, I'll stay with you for 1 week and do anything you want." Again, the engineer took the frog out, smiled at it, and put it back into his pocket. Finally, the frog asked, "What is the matter? I've told you I'm a beautiful princess, and that I'll stay with you for 1 week and do anything you want. Why won't you kiss me? The engineer said. Look, I'm an engineer. I don't have time for a girlfriend, but a talking frog? Now that's cool. 2 engineers were standing at the base of a flagpole, looking at its top. A woman walked by and asked what they were doing. We're supposed to find the height of this flagpole, said Sven, but we don't have a ladder. The woman took a wrench from her purse, loosened a couple of bolts, and laid the pole down on the ground. Then she took a tape measure from her pocketbook, took a measurement, and announced, 21 feet, 6 inches, and walked away. One engineer shook his head and laughed. A lot of good that does us. We ask for the height, and she gives us the length. Both engineers have since quit their engineering jobs and are currently serving as elected members of parliament. A wealthy old lady decides to go on a photo safari in Africa, taking her poodle along for company. One day the poodle starts chasing butterflies and before long discovers that he's lost. Wandering about, he notices a hungry-looking leopard heading rapidly in his direction. The poodle thinks, "Oh!" Noticing some bones on the ground close by, he immediately settles down to chew on the bones with his back to the approaching cat. Just as the leopard is about to leap, the poodle exclaims loudly, "Boy, that was one delicious leopard! I wonder if there are any more around here." Hearing this, the leopard halts his attack in mid-strike. A look of terror comes over him and he slinks away into the trees. "Phew," says the leopard. "That was close. That poodle nearly had me." Meanwhile, a monkey who had been watching the whole scene from a nearby tree figures he can put this knowledge to good use and trade it for protection from the leopard. So off he goes, but the poodle sees him heading after the leopard with great speed and figures that something must be up. The monkey soon catches up with the leopard, spills the beans and strikes a deal for himself with the leopard. The leopard is furious at being made a fool of and says, "Here, monkey, hop on my back so you can watch me chew that poodle to bits." Now, the poodle sees the leopard coming with the monkey on his back and thinks, "What am I going to do now?" But instead of running, the dog sits down with his back to his attackers, pretending he hasn't seen them yet, and waits until they get just close enough to hear. "Where's that damn monkey?" the poodle says. "I sent him off an hour ago to bring me another leopard." There was once a great actor who had been in the acting profession for a number of years, more years in fact than he cared to remember. All day long before a play, he would practice his lines over and over again until he had them memorized absolutely perfectly. Because he never made a mistake, he became egotistical and turned all of his coworkers away. As a result, he fell out of favor with theater management and struggled to find any work in the acting profession. Finally, after years of unsuccessfully looking for work, he found a theater where they were prepared to give him a chance to shine again. The director told him, "This is the most important part, and it has only one line. You must walk onto the stage carrying a rose. You must hold the rose with just one finger and your thumb, sniff the rose deeply, and then say the line, 'Ah, the sweet aroma of my mistress.'" Well, as you might imagine, the actor was thrilled at being given this opportunity, and vowed to himself that he would remember the line at all costs, and not let the theater management down. All day long before the play, he practiced his line over and over again until he had it memorized absolutely perfect. Finally, the time came for the play to begin. The curtain went up, the actor walked onto the stage, held his fingers up, and with great passion delivered the line. "Ah, the sweet aroma of my mistress." The theater erupted. The audience was screaming with laughter, and the director was steaming. "You fool!" he cried. "You have ruined me!" The actor was bewildered. "What happened? Did I forget my line?" he asked. "No, you idiot!" the theater director screamed. "You forgot the rose!"